Tonight on Bridge City News, Maclean's magazine has come out with its list of Canada's most dangerous cities once again. We will tell you where Lethbridge ranked. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition that impacts many of our veterans. We speak to a retired warrant officer who shares how he tries to cope with PTSD on a daily basis. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shuffled his cabinet today with some surprise appointments. We will explain.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. We begin tonight with Maclean's magazine coming out with a list of Canada's most dangerous places for 2020. Now, when it comes to all crime, not just violent crime, Lethbridge ranked number 15. Last year, we ranked 19th overall. The magazine compared crime stats from 237 small to large cities across the country. While Lethbridge did not have any homicides, we did have our fair share of other crimes. Maclean's study said the assault rate per 100,000 people is 1,051 compared to the national average of 457. Firearms offences in our city were 10.11, the national average is 7.58. Robberies, 62.65, now that's slightly above the national rate of 60.58. Break-and-enters in Lethbridge were more than double the national average at 883, the national average being 431. Impaired driving was high as well at 300. The national average was 190 per 100,000 people. Now, the top 5 cities in Alberta when it comes to overall crime were Wetaskiwin at number 4, Grand Prairie 9th, Red Deer 10th, and Lethbridge, as I mentioned, number 15. Red Deer was number 10, and Medicine Hat a distant 76th. As for which city in Canada took the top spot, that distinction went to North Battleford, Saskatchewan, followed closely by Thompson, Manitoba. National Addictions Awareness Week is coming up November the 25th. Alberta Health Services had a community substance abuse awareness forum at the Coast Hotel earlier today, featuring guest speaker Nicole Sharon. Organizers say it's important for people to better understand the stigma attached to drug use.
Our local coalition, our drug coalition, CSART, puts on this conference, and I think this is about our 6th or 7th that we've been doing, and it's just to create awareness of addiction issues in our community, but also educate about addiction and raise the awareness that way. And so this particular event is about the brain and its impact in terms of addiction and how it sort of reframes what we're thinking about what causes addiction and what are some of the changes that happen in the brain around addiction. And so we're hoping that by people becoming more educated about it, they may have a different perception about the people who are living with a substance use disorder.
Bullying can take on many forms, including physical violence, verbal intimidation, and psychological manipulation. Most workplace bullying is verbal or psychological, not physical. The effects of these abuses can be just as devastating. Today, the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce delved into how you can curb workplace violence.
The Chamber, specifically our HR committee, identified some issues that businesses and topics we needed to focus on. So we came here in collaboration with Volunteer Lethbridge, who was kind enough to give us the space. We brought our friends from OHS to go over bullying and harassment in the workplace. Number one, to make sure that we're providing proper training and updates as to actually what litigation we have to follow as employers. And two, to make sure that the employers and our members at the Chamber of Commerce have safe workplaces. We had a great turnout today. It's good to see this conversation emerge, and it's going to be engaging as it continues to do so in the community.
Alberta Occupational Health and Safety is responsible for enforcing OHS laws through inspections, investigations, and prosecutions. The legislation enables minimum standards for safe and healthy practices in Alberta workplaces. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition that has impacted many in Canada, including our veterans. Vance McGrath is a retired warrant officer who served with Canadian Armed Forces for close to 3 decades. Vance suffers from PTSD. He says he was diagnosed after returning from his tour in Afghanistan, and it hit him very hard during a time he went on holidays with his family.
When we were in Disneyland, walking around, we were up at, going by one of the food courts, one of the many ethnic ones, I don't know which one, but there was a certain smell that come across there that hit me, and right away, it was the same thing. Like I just froze in my tracks. Basically, I went right white. The blood drained from my face. Again, same thing. Started sweating and got into a real panicky mood. And my daughter didn't know what was going on, and I just said, "We got to get out of here now."
Watch the full interview with retired warrant officer Vance McGrath talking about his challenges coping with PTSD. That's coming up in the second half of our show. Sitting on Santa's lap around Christmas time can be fun for some kids, but overwhelming for others. Park Place Mall has something unique this year. It's called Sensory Santa. The mall is working with the Chinook Autism Society to allow kids with sensory disabilities to enjoy meeting Father Christmas. It takes place before the mall opens this Sunday.
We wanted to look at our options to see what we could do to keep the momentum of Christmas going and kind of think outside the box. But it's one of those things that seeing what it's done right now and the response we've received from our shoppers and the surrounding community, it's definitely going to be an annual event, and we're going to look at making it bigger, better, maybe 2 events next year. We'll see how everything plays out, but we definitely wanted to focus on this one, get it right the first time around, and go from there. Kind of learned a lot about what needs to happen with people to meet Santa, get a picture with Santa with sensory disabilities, some of the issues and problems they can run into, like crowds and loud noises.
Now, once it was announced that Sensory Santa would be coming for a visit, it took less than a day to fill up all 40 spots. A spokesperson for the mall, however, says you can still have your child put on a waiting list in case anyone cannot make it. To register to meet Sensory Santa, you can email Jared with the email you see below. What started out as a small idea grew into a campus-wide initiative that resulted in more than 700 University of Lethbridge students receiving a free breakfast this week. The Buy a Student Breakfast program started with the university's Office of Alumni Relations as a way to engage its alumni with the current U of L student body.
1 in 4 U of L students has some type of food scarcity, and they can't afford food, whether it's groceries or meal to meal. Towards the end of the semesters, their budget kind of gets a lot more tight, so students tend to start skipping meals towards the end of the semester. So we're trying to bring more awareness to that, and also more awareness to all the on-campus resources that students have access to.
For a $10 donation, people were able to buy 2 students' breakfasts. Volunteers handed out breakfast vouchers to students as they made their way to classes. Today is National Child Day. It marks the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child. By ratifying the document in 1991, Canada made a commitment to ensure children are treated with dignity and respect. This allows kids the opportunity to have a voice and to have their basic needs provided for. Alberta's Minister of Children's Services, Rebecca Schultz, had this to say about National Child Day. National Child Day reminds us that every child is special and every child matters. I encourage everyone to get involved in activities and to help educate our children about their rights. Hundreds of members of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees will be protesting against more public sector cuts at the University of Calgary tomorrow. President of the AUPE, Guy Smith, said they were informed that 250 jobs would be eliminated at the university. Smith says workers at 5 other post-secondary institutions have already been told to expect a 2% wage rollback. 7 other groups of AUPE members in healthcare, pensions, and the Alberta government face the same wage cut demands. The AUPE represents around 96,000 workers across the province. Alberta's NDP opposition leader Rachel Notley was kicked out of the legislature yesterday. She refused to apologize for comments about the UCP government's plans to fire the province's election watchdog.
Rachel Notley, you are no longer permitted to be in the Assembly for the rest of the day.
Notley said Government House Leader Jason Nixon was making misleading statements on proposed legislation that would end the contract of Lauren Gibson. Gibson, as you may remember, investigated the 2017 leadership race and doled out more than $200,000 in fines related to fundraising misdeeds. Legislature rules do not allow for someone to say that one member is deliberately misleading or lying. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau unveiled his new cabinet today, and there were some surprise moves. Chrystia Freeland will no longer be Foreign Affairs Minister. That portfolio will now go to François-Philippe Champagne. Catherine McKenna has been removed as the Environment Minister. BC's Jonathan Wilkinson will be taking over that role. McKenna will now become the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. Pablo Rodriguez was named the new Government House Leader. Stephen Jabot will be the new Heritage Minister. Seamus O'Regan moves from Indigenous Services to Natural Resources. Mark Miller will become the new Minister of Indigenous Services. Bill Morneau will remain on as Finance Minister. Lawrence Macaulay keeps his portfolio as Minister of Veterans Affairs. Jim Carr, who's being treated for cancer, has been appointed a special representative for the prairies to ensure that people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba have a voice in cabinet. As his caucus was sworn in today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said Canadians sent a message they want Parliament to work. He said he will work with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to address some key priorities.
I'm focused on the government changing the way they do things. And for the past 4 years, Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal government have shown again and again that they've prioritized the very richest with an accord with an agreement with the United States that allows rich pharmaceutical companies to make more profit, that weakens our supply management, that does not include clear enforceable protections for workers, that they've chosen to help the richest corporations instead of people, and I want that to change.
The CN strike continues. It's having a major impact on our farmers trying to get their grain to market. CN delivers up to 5,650 hopper cars per week to Canadian elevators, amounting to more than 500,000 tons of grain. Now, there's also a backlog of oil since the tanker cars from CN are also not moving. One of our regular political contributors, Brian Lilly, says the CN rail strike may not be dealt with for a while, even after Parliament is called back on December 5th.
Coming back on December 5th, that is a Thursday. And this is why this is important. That's a Thursday, so they've got to select a speaker. That takes a little while. They got to do the speech from the throne. There are formalities around that. They're not debating anything related to CN rail strike until well after that. They may not get to it before they break for Christmas.
Mr. Lilly will also have details of a new poll which says 75% of Albertans feel our province is not being treated fairly by the rest of the country. That's coming up after business news. U.S. President Donald Trump is insisting that he wanted nothing from Ukraine and declared the impeachment hearings should be brought to an end.
What do you want from Ukraine? He asks me, screaming. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. This is Ambassador Sondland speaking to me. Just happened. To which I turned off the television. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. What do you want? What do you want? It was a very short and abrupt conversation that he had with me. They said he was not in a good mood. I'm always in a good mood. I don't know what that is. He just said, now he's talking about what my response. So he's going, what do you want? What do you want? I hear all these theories. What do you want, right? And now, here's my response that he gave, just gave. Ready? You have the cameras rolling? I want nothing. That's what I want from Ukraine. That's what I said.
It was on this day that Britain's future Queen Elizabeth II marries, the Mexican Revolution begins, and cabaret hits Broadway. This is Today in History for November the 20th.
November 20th, 1945. Months after World War II ends in Europe, 24 Nazi leaders go on trial before an International War Crimes Tribunal in Nuremberg, Germany. 1925.
Violence or lawlessness or rioting makes no sense whatsoever in the United States.
Robert F. Kennedy, one of the most enduring icons from American politics in the 1960s, is born in Brookline, Massachusetts. 1947.
The whole world joins Britain in wishing two young people long life, prosperity, and happiness as they embark on their new life.
Britain's Princess Elizabeth, future Queen Elizabeth II, marries Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, in London's Westminster Abbey. 1975. After nearly 4 decades of absolute rule, Spain's dictator General Francisco Franco dies in Madrid, 2 weeks before his 83rd birthday. 1910. Revolution breaks out in Mexico as Francisco Madero leads a revolt that sparks a wave of upheaval lasting the rest of the decade. And 1966.
Welcome and bienvenue, welcome.
In New York, the musical Cabaret, set in 1930s Berlin before the Nazis' rise to power, opens on Broadway. Today in History, November 20th. Tim McGuire, The Associated Press.
The Hamilton Ticats and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have arrived in Calgary ahead of the 107th Grey Cup taking place on Sunday. The Bombers last hoisted the trophy 29 years ago, and it's been about 20 years for Hamilton.
It's an understatement of how proud I am of our staff, our organization, and the men in that locker room. Long journey. It's a long journey. I don't know what week we're working on, around 23 weeks when you include the preseason, you add the buys, different things like that. It's a long time to spend together. Anytime you can make a journey like this and then have something to play for at the end, it's special.
I think when the players are out and about in the city doing normal stuff that normal people do. I mean, imagine they're getting stopped, and I think the message is pretty clear that the city is pretty excited. The way the schedule is going to play out through the week is perfect. It's okay, you know, because you're not having your meetings right after practice. You're not having meetings right before practice. It's all disjointed, you know. Right. But by the end of the day, they're going to get all their work done, and they're going to know it.
Good luck going out to both the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Ticats. Should be a great game. We had quite a bit of snow over the past 24 hours. Fortunately, it stopped. Nothing but blue sky and sunshine for the rest of the week. Complete weather details are coming up. Lots of sunshine, but slightly cooler today. Tonight, mainly clear with a low near -7. Tomorrow, mainly sunny with a high expected near 4. Sunshine at 6 degrees is expected on Friday. Blue sky and 6 as well for both Saturday and Sunday. A nice weekend is shaping up. Cooling off slightly to 2 degrees on Monday with a few clouds. Tuesday, the mercury will drop even further to -3 under a mainly cloudy sky. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 3 degrees with an average low of -8. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 2005 at 17 degrees, and the record low was a chilly -32 in 1996. Sunrise was at 7:50, sunset at 4:44. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up across the country now. Victoria will be mainly sunny and should see a high near 9. Sunshine at 8 degrees is on tap for Vancouver. Sunny and 6 degrees for both Calgary and Edmonton tomorrow. Expect a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of only -2 in Regina. Mostly cloudy and 0 for Saskatoon. Winnipeg was snowy today. Tomorrow mainly cloudy with a high of -9. Expect rain and a high near 6 degrees in Toronto on Thursday. Overcast and 2 degrees for Ottawa. Mainly cloudy and +2 as well for Montreal. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick should be mainly cloudy and get up to 3 degrees. A chance of showers and 4 for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Charlottetown, PEI will have rain and 4. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect showers and a high near 5 degrees for tomorrow. Lowe's is closing 34 stores across Canada, and it says it's necessary to ensure the long-term growth of the Canadian business. It says 26 Rona outlets, 6 Lowe's, and 2 Reno depots in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Ontario, and Nova Scotia will close by the end of February. No word yet if any stores will be impacted in Lethbridge. Lowe's Canada says the underperforming stores will be shut down. The company did not say how many employees would be affected. The chain also announced the closure of 27 stores and 4 other facilities in November of last year. The Western Grain Elevator Association is concerned about the impact of the CN rail strike on the flow of grain to port in a tough harvest year. CN services about half the grain terminals in the West, and the association says it fears the strike could lead to lost sales and contract penalties for terminal operators and grain producers. The federal labor minister is urging the rail company and the Teamsters to continue negotiating. A new report says the Trans Mountain Pipeline received $320 million in subsidies from the Canadian and Alberta governments in the first half of this year. The Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis says such large subsidies require more disclosure and public discussion. The Federal Finance Department says it did not consider any part of the funding to be a subsidy. It says Trans Mountain is undertaking a major expansion and incurring expenses without any related revenues, which is normal during the development phase of any big project. It also says it considers the expansion project to be economically viable. Uber is launching a pilot project next month allowing passengers and drivers to record audio of their rides. The feature being tested in Mexico and Brazil is aimed at improving safety amid accusations that some of its drivers have assaulted and even raped passengers. Customers will be allowed to opt into the recording and can be shared later with the company. It eventually hopes to launch in other markets, but has said it has no timeline for any possible expansion. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down almost 6 points today to 17,005. The Dow was down almost 113 points on the day to 27,821. The S&P 500 was down almost 12 to 3108. And the NASDAQ was down around 44 points to 8526. Oil was up $1.90 to 57.11 per barrel. Natural gas was up 5 cents to 2.56. Gold was down 37 cents to 14.7126 per ounce, and silver was even on the day to 17.15 per ounce. Wheat is at $231 per metric ton, barley's at $232, canola's at $441, and corn is at $275 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 53 cents to 119.53. Feeder cattle were unchanged at 147. Lean hogs were down $1.70 to 62.15. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 75.14 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Maclean's Magazine has come out with its list of Canada's most dangerous places 2020. Now, when it comes to all crime, not just violent crime, Lethbridge ranks number 15. We ranked number 19th last year. The magazine compared crime stats from 237 small to large cities across the country. Up next, a conversation with a retired veteran who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. Here are the challenges retired warrant officer Vance McGrath faces on a daily basis. That interview is on deck. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. The Downtown Lethbridge BRZ is looking for volunteers to help with the Downtown Holiday Market taking place Saturday, November 23rd. Volunteers will be assisting with setup and takedown, handing out popcorn and hot chocolate, and the best job of all, helping Santa Claus. For more information, email tasha@downtownlethbridge.com. Come to the Nikayuko Japanese Garden on Friday, November 29th as they kick off the season with their Winter Light Festival, which will run until January 31st. On that evening, the gates will open at 6 p.m. with greetings from sponsors and dignitaries at 7. Admission is $9 for adults, $7 for kids ages 6 to 15, and ticket packages, which include food and drinks, are also available. For more information, visit nikayuko.com. The 2019 Big Christmas Trade Show and Farmers Market is taking place November 29th and November 30th at Exhibition Park. Come for unique gift ideas and a huge selection of holiday baking. New this year, the event is expanding into the entire main pavilion with over 250 vendors. Admission is $3. Children under 10 can enter for free. For more information, visit exhibitionpark.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
In Canada, it is estimated that up to 10% of our war veterans, including peacekeeping forces, will go on to experience a chronic condition known as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Joining me now in studio is Vance McGrath, a local retired warrant officer who served with the Canadian Armed Forces for almost 30 years, including conflicts in Afghanistan and Bosnia. Vance, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you.
So how would you describe PTSD and how it impacted you?
Well, I would say PTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorder, is be like an anxiety issue, put it that way. It's something that a person gets from being in a situation that they seem to be deemed upon themselves as a traumatic experience.
Right.
In my case, it was because of the Afghanistan and Bosnia. When I was there, certain things that I've seen and did, kind of against the norm of what we are in Canada, really impacted me, and I brought that home with me.
Can we talk about some of those experiences that you can share with our viewers? Maybe something that particularly really jumps out for you that changed your life? Yeah,
the big thing is what I've seen in some of the places I've been. It's you really can't prepare for it. When you go into we'll call it a war zone, for lack of a better term, but when you go into a war zone, you see things, you see death, you see the aftermath of what one human individual can do to another human individual. Right. It's really hard to understand in my mind how certain individuals can do that to another group of individuals. And when you see massive bodies, you see bodies that have been in an explosion or a landmine, or a vehicle hit a landmine, and they're missing all their parts. When you see...
like fellow soldiers, for instance?
Fellow soldiers, or even civilians. Civilians take a lot of the brunt. They're kind of caught in the middle of it all. Mm-hmm. A good example, another one is I did a tour in Cambodia. Cambodia, under the Geneva Convention, you have to when you lay mines down, you have to plot your locations. Mm-hmm. They laid millions of mines in Cambodia, never plotted nothing.
Oh, no.
When we were there, so we had no idea where they were. But when you're out on patrol or doing whatever you have to do, you see a lot of children run around. It could be any age but young, but they're all missing legs or arms or severely scarred from, say, explosion or blasts.
They could be out kicking a soccer ball or just playing, right?
It could be anything like that. Where our camp was set up, we had wire fencing set up, and just on the other side of it was a farmer's field, but it was all landmine. He couldn't farm that field because he didn't know what was there, as an example.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's the big thing is you see children, non-combatants that suffer the consequences of the war, and it hits home when you're looking at it and you go, I've got a daughter at home, and it's like, do I want her to go through this? Well, not at all, and so different things like that play on people's minds, eh?
So what are some of the triggers for you with PTSD? Is it sights, smells, sounds?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I can think there's, I'm sure if you looked in the textbook definition, there's all kinds of things they can say to set triggers. But each individual, you can't say, well, a smell will be a trigger. Yeah, it could be one of the triggers. For me, it's a certain smell. For me, it's a crowded situation. When I go with the wife to, say, the mall, I'm okay, but once I get in there, and if it's, say, a Black Friday sale, and all of a sudden it gets packed or shoulder to shoulder, all of a sudden I get real apprehensive.
Really anxious?
Really, like, well, basically, the heart kicks into it, it speeds up.
Sure.
I start to sweat. The next thing I know is I'm starting to look for the exits. And what it is because I'm in a situation that I don't have any control of. So the wife is good about that. She knows it, so she'll take me and we'll leave and we'll go get some fresh air, and she'll get me out of that situation. Another big one for me is smell. Certain smells will bring back memories that maybe I forgot about or haven't thought about in a long time. And I could point to one of those specifically. It was just after my tour in Afghanistan. We come back, I come home, and I said, I'm back. I want to take my daughter to Disneyland. So, I'm back home and stuff like that. And we were in Disneyland, walking around. We were up at, going by one of the food courts, one of the many ethnic ones, I don't know which one, but there was a certain smell that come across there that hit me, and right away, it was the same thing. Like, I just froze in my tracks. Basically, I went right white. The blood drained from my face. Again, same thing, started sweating and got into a real panicky mood. And my daughter didn't know what was going on, and I said, we got to get out of here now. Like,
so if there were lots of crowds, plus the smell.
There was the crowds.
That's a double whammy for you, isn't it?
And the smell and the crowds. And so I had to get out of there, go someplace, and regain my thoughts, settle down. And I was there for her, and I didn't want to ruin her, her day type of deal, eh?
Of course.
So, of course, and eventually I got under control. We made it back out, but I had to kind of explain to her what happened and, just watch what's going on, so.
And I'm sure she was very understanding.
Of course, yeah, so.
Let's talk a bit about that transition from military life into civilian life, and how tough it can be at times, especially when you suffer from PTSD.
Yeah, well, yeah, so like I said, I did 28 years. So I joined when I was 18 when I joined up. And so basically right out of high school, I joined the military. So I really didn't have, another job. And I left to join the military. So that was my job. The things that you do in the military, it's not a normal job. And as a young 18-year-old, you receive specific training. You learn things. You learn tactics. You learn different things. It's not like you're out there, you're, I don't know, doing a teller job at a
And it's not all textbooks, it's all hands-on learning experience.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, you got the textbook version of it, so you understand the philosophy of what you're doing, but then you have to actually go out and do those in the field.
What about some of the programs that the government has now that can help you through your PTSD? What are some of the most effective ways of helping you?
The problem I have with the programs, the way it's set up now, I can't talk for people that are in the military now and the treatment that they're receiving and how it works out for them. I've been out for almost 10 years now. I can talk about my own experience and being here in Lethbridge. There is nothing. They told me there's really nobody here that can that's qualified, if that's the right word, to deal with the issues that I have.
Wow.
I've seen psychiatrists, I've seen psychologists, I've seen cognitive behavioral therapists. That was here in Lethbridge. That was set up on my own through my doctor. That was not done through the military. I contacted the military side of it through Veterans Affairs, asking questions about it. They said they have nothing down in Lethbridge.
You'd have to go to Calgary, maybe?
They said possibly looking at coming to Edmonton.
Edmonton?
Yeah.
That's 5 hours away.
I
a
realize.
5-hour drive.
Yeah.
So for veterans who don't have programs and access to those programs, do they turn to alcohol?
Well,
I mean, I hate to say it, but
well, it's true though. It's true. The problem we have is, or one of the problems I see, is when somebody wants help. If I call in or somebody else calls in to say make an appointment, say, listen, I'm having problems, they say there's a 24-hour support line you can call in anytime. All right, but that's just call in. That's just getting whatever's off your chest now. But if you need to come in for therapy or you want to come in for counseling, you could be looking at 2 to 3 months before you can even get in to see somebody.
There's that much of a backlog.
There is, and that's just my experience. You know, somebody might say, "Well, I got in a week." That's fine. That's good for you. But under my experiences, that's what's been going on with me. And
so we need help here in Lethbridge. I mean, we have around 2,000 veterans here, and some of those veterans must also be suffering from PTSD.
I'm sure there is. And
so we need help?
We do. We have the Legion. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Legion can and will step in on your behalf, but it follows on the politics side of it. I mean, they can only do so much, like when they're talking, if they make the phone calls for you, they can only do so much however they receive on the other end. Right. So if the other end is a delay or there's a backlog, they're not pushing that agenda through for you, so you're still on the backlog. I belong to, I don't know if I should say it or not, but I belong to a Commandos MC group. That's a Special Forces group. We're all over Canada, but we're through Alberta too. We have a lot of military members in that. Might not know them all, but we all share a similar background.
So you can support each other?
So we support
each other?
Yeah, yep. Exactly. So we have, we do what we call buddy checks. Every now and then I'll make a few phone calls to some guys I know, okay, they might be having a rough time. I'll just give them a call, say, how's it going?
Almost like an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Having somebody there to support you.
Yeah,
and help you.
And that's just our way of, because I realize that the system is somewhat flawed, and for, you know, he might be in between, say, we can get you in, but your next one might not be for a month. So in between that, what does he do? You know, and so we want to be there for you, and we want him to know, or the other individual to know, that there's always somebody there. You're not alone in this, and we have quite a few. Actually, just on a personal note, just last weekend, we had a guy that was ready to commit suicide. He was going to shoot himself, and we found out, we got a hold of him. We talked him, and we talked him out of that. So now we're dealing with him and trying to bring him along.
When you come across a situation like that, Vance, where somebody feels there's no other way to turn but to take a gun to themselves or to end their own life, how do you approach that situation with that person? What do you say to that person?
Well, there's not really a lot that we have to say. You know, the big thing is we call them up, or we approach them, and we can say, listen, I understand what you're going through.
Because you've been through it yourself.
I've been there. We have others that have been there. It may not be the same situation, but you know, I'm dealing with it myself. And you know, the big thing is let them know that they're not alone, that we are there to listen. Like, you don't even have to talk. Want to go out, just go to Tim Hortons, have a coffee. We'll go for a coffee, just sit there, just to have the company. Like, if you want to talk, fine. If you don't want to talk, that's fine, but I am there, and I will be there as long as it needs to be till you can get through that phase of your life.
What kind of an impact does post-traumatic stress disorder have on relationships? Let's talk a bit about that.
It can be very strenuous. From personal experience and from people I know, a lot of marriages have gone down the tube. The big thing I find with that, and the same thing with me when I come back, is you come back, you're kind of a changed person. You're not the person you are when you left. And so after 6 or 7, 8 months, when you come back, you have a different personality. So you could be more irritable. You could be, say, less loving.
Maybe a shorter fuse, quicker temper?
Oh, definitely
Yeah.
quicker temper.
Yeah.
You know, you could say, you know, I don't care about nothing. You're just going to lay on the couch, or because you just gave up on the world.
So depression sinks in.
Yeah, depression. There we go. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, depression sets, even anxiety, you know, and if you don't have a strong spouse to help you through this, and especially, but the spouse has to understand not so much what you're going through, but has to be able to understand and kind of ride the boat with you and say, okay, listen, yeah, you're being irritable, or you're being like my wife as an example. Like, we're in the mall. When I start getting to my anxiety attacks and this other stuff, she recognizes it, and okay, let's go, and she
sees the symptoms.
She does.
And removes you from the situation.
And she takes me out of that situation. So she's very strong-willed.
It's beautiful.
And she looks after me, and then, but we talk, and she understands. She understands. She doesn't understand, and I don't think we've got into depth yet of what I've experienced, but she understands of what I've been through and where I've been.
But that's a strong woman that can do that for you.
Yeah, and you have to have that. And a lot of the problems I see happening is you have spouses that can't deal with the changes. They don't. I don't want to say they don't want to work through it, but you know, they don't want to spend the time and work through it to keep that relationship going and help the individual out in his time of need. And so what happens there is you have a guy come back. He's having a rough go of it. Now he's having family issues. So if the wife packs up the kids and leaves, so now you got an individual that's suffering from PTSD. He just lost his family. Odds are pretty good he's not working yet. So now, what does he turn to? Well, he turns to alcohol, he turns to drugs, or he looks at another way of relieving the pain.
Right.
So, yeah.
Where do you think things will go in the next 10 years when it comes to veterans suffering from PTSD? And what programs are needed from the federal government to help our veterans?
I think the big thing is they need to early recognition of the problem, and it's hard to do. Like, it's hard to recognize and bring forth the symptoms and stuff of PTSD, because a lot of individuals that are suffering from it don't seek help. You know, some like for me, for years, I didn't think I had a problem. I thought I was just in a transition phase, coming back from an area of conflict, coming home. So now, okay, I'm just transitioning back into a different lifestyle. It'll go away. The feeling will go away. The truth is, it doesn't. So it would be nice if you could see quicker responses to individuals that require help. More, like we talked about the wait times. So let's if we're having problems with the wait times,
let's address it. Address it.
Yeah, address it.
Yeah.
And so if there is a problem, then let's look at maybe we need to bring in a couple more counselors. We have to work something out, or what can we do? What can we do to help? Vets, but it's other than vets that have PTSD. But what can we do for vets that are returning, that we can get them into counseling now, so that they don't lose their family, they don't turn to drugs and alcohol, they don't get kicked out of the military because of it, they don't have the thoughts of suicide, and so a lot more, I think, has to be brought forward as awareness to help that situation.
Vance McGrath, local retired Canadian Forces veteran, thanks so much for sharing about your experiences with PTSD and joining us in studio today.
Yep. Thank you.
$3,200 CN railway workers have walked off the job. That has impacted things dramatically here in Alberta, since we need rail tanker cars to get our oil to market, get our grains to market. Joining me now to discuss this is one of our regular political contributors, Brian Lidley, joining me from Toronto. Brian, Some Alberta MLAs are demanding that Parliament be recalled much sooner than December 5th to deal with this issue.
And I don't blame them. Sonia Savage, who is the energy minister, Devin Dreeshen, the agriculture minister. I know Devin Dreeshen from his time in Ottawa. I've met Sonia Savage, both very smart people. Look, Andrew Scheer wanted the House of Commons to come back. I'm just looking at my calendar now, November 25th. And that would be Monday, November 25th. So that's less than a week from now, Hal. Okay, so they're going to announce cabinet, give cabinet a bit of time. That's great. Fine. So the cabinet members, that's all happening. But what's going on with this? If they came back on the 25th, they'd elect a speaker, they'd have a speech from the throne, and then they could get down to business. Look, coming back on December 5th, that is a Thursday. And this is why this is important. That's a Thursday. So they've got to select a speaker. That takes a little while. They got to do the speech from the throne. There are formalities around that. They're not debating anything related to CN rail strike until well after that. They may not get to it before they break for Christmas. Now, I'll give you a personal example from my time living in Ottawa that, it just affected the city of Ottawa. Ottawa's city bus service, because it goes across the border between Ontario and Quebec, it goes over to Hull and Gatineau. It is actually regulated by the federal government. One time, the city of Ottawa bus service went on strike after Parliament had broken for the Christmas break. That meant that over that time period, in the middle of snowstorms, in the middle of Christmas shopping, the bus service, which about 30% of a city of 1 million people uses to get to work, was shut down. It was crippling for the city. What we're talking about here are several important industries, the oil industry, the grain industry, just for a start, never mind all the other industries that are reliant on that. I mean, that's just a very Western Canadian perspective, but, even in Eastern Canada, there's going to be impacts on all of this. This is bad for the Canadian economy. So, Ms. Savage, Mr. Dreeshen, very wise to call for this return. We'll see if the Prime Minister listens. He's been showing that in some ways that he's learned from the results of the election. He's not doing selfies. He's not doing stunts. He's seeming, when he does show up in public, much more contrite. But then you talk to people that have been in meetings with him and not quite much of a difference. So I'm not overly hopeful, but let's hold out a bit of a hope that they do call Parliament back early.
Yeah, we have to deal with the CN strike sooner rather than later, definitely. Brian, a new poll by Abacus Data says 75% of Albertans feel our province is being treated unfairly by the rest of the country, especially in terms of our energy and equalization policies.
And here's the bad news. 60% of Canadians think that, no, Alberta's being treated just fine. And in some ways, it comes down to geography and party loyalty. So just allow me to look at my computer screen for a second to give you some of these numbers, Al. We're talking about 63% of Conservative supporters across Canada agree Alberta's not being treated fairly. 32% of New Democrats say Alberta is not being treated fairly, but only 25% of Liberals. And then when you break it down geographically, 73% in Atlantic Canada say, oh, you're being treated just fine. 72% in Quebec, 63% in Ontario. It's really only in the prairie provinces where people say, yeah, this isn't working out so well. That has to be of concern because, of course, we know that Western alienation, the Wexit movement, I know Premier Scott, Moe, and Pallister have all said, look, we're not in favor of separation, but there are problems, and we need to deal with those. I understand that, but this poll basically says, forget Wexit. We just don't think that you've got any problems at all. Quit your whining. And I don't think that that's the right message right now when we're dealing with national divisions that, as Ontario's Premier Doug Ford has said, among others, we've never seen them quite so high.
Yeah, definitely. The issues that have to be addressed to help Albertans feel like they're a little more part of Confederation once again, especially when it comes to our energy policies and the equalization payments. Now, the Council of the Federation will be meeting in Toronto on December 2nd, Brian. It's an invite by Ontario Premier Doug Ford to deal with some of the national unity issues.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's odd that this is an issue that has seized Alberta in particular, but also Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And the move to get this going started just steps from where I'm sitting right now over at Queen's Park, Ontario's legislature. New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs had dropped by for a meeting, just an informal meeting with Ontario Premier Doug Ford. They're sitting having a couple of double-doubles in Ford's office, and they called up Scott Moe, started a conversation, and Ford said, look, things are really bad. We should do a Council of the Federation. I know that you're the chair, Scott, but I'm willing to host it. And they agreed to it for being in Toronto for a number of reasons. One, it's neutral ground. And we're talking about national unity issues. Of course, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and to a degree, Manitoba have different views than Quebec and British Columbia. So Ontario's kind of neutral ground for all of them. Also, short notice, getting flights, getting hotel accommodation. Toronto, much easier to handle that. So they're going to meet out by the Toronto airport on December 2nd. So I'll be out there. We'll be watching that. And you and I will be talking about what comes out of that. It's interesting to see the different discussions. I hope that Doug Ford is able to do what he does best, and that's bring people together to talk, because there are very different points of view on this, and people need to start seeing each other's sides.
There was some controversy during the last federal election about Tory leader Andrew Scheer's dual citizenship. Brian, a list published recently featuring ex-U.S. citizens does not include Andrew Scheer's name. The omission raises questions as to whether Scheer actually took the steps to turf his U.S. citizenship.
Or if he took them early enough. Look, you and I have talked about this since the election. Was it social issues that brought him down? Was it his discomfort in that? And I've said from the beginning, Andrew Scheer looked uncomfortable answering questions on issues of abortion and same-sex marriage, but he also looked uncomfortable answering questions about his insurance job, about Warren Kinsella and the work that his firm did for him, and about his American citizenship. He just couldn't seem to give an answer that didn't sound like he was grasping in some way, and he was uneasy as he was talking about his American citizenship. I kind of knew about this vaguely in the background, but I guess like Scheer had forgotten about it, because as I've told you, I know Andrew Scheer's father. He used to work at the Ottawa Citizen. He's around Parliament Hill quite a bit. I got to know him over the years, and I knew he was from New York City. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, but I'd forgotten about it. So did Scheer. Scheer did not deal with this when he was Speaker of the House. He did not deal with this when he was a backbench Conservative MP and denouncing Michael Jean for having French citizenship. And he didn't deal with it apparently until the summer. So this list is just published. That tells us that Scheer did not make the cut in terms of getting on this list that was published last week. Here are all the people that have renounced U.S. citizenship. All right, public list. He should have done this sooner. He should have dealt with this. He used this as a political tool. He had to have known that this was going to come back at him. I'm someone that's entitled to dual citizenship. I've never taken it. If I had denounced others for taking it or for having dual citizenship in public office and then was running for that same public office, you're darn right I would, renounce my other citizenship. This was a bad mistake on Andrew Scheer, and the publication of this list shows that he didn't take it seriously and didn't deal with it soon enough.
So bottom line, can somebody become prime minister if they have dual citizenship?
Well, it's happened before. I mean, I guess you wouldn't say that Sir John A. Macdonald had dual citizenship because everyone was just a British subject at that point. John Turner was born in the UK, but raised in Canada. He was prime minister, of course, in the 1980s. I guess he would have been the last one, unless somebody had dual citizenship and didn't tell. I don't think Canadians have dual citizenship, look at it overall as a problem. But when you're looking to lead the country, I think it starts to become an issue because it leads to questions of divided loyalty. If you're going up against the United States or France or Britain or anywhere else in terms of trade negotiations or any other issue, which side are you on? And specifically in the case of someone like Tom Mulcair or Stéphane Dion, who took it out as adults, you actually had to pledge allegiance to that country. Andrew Scheer got it through birth because of his father, and his father applied for it, did all the paperwork. But if you're going to take out citizenship and pledge allegiance to another country and then try and lead this one, I think Canadians have a fair degree of unease of saying, whose side are you on when it comes to those tense moments?
Boeing is promising billions upon billions of dollars in investments in Canada if it gets the contract for our next fighter jet. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, $30 billion worth of investments if we give them the contract for just 88 jets. Of course, this goes back how many years now? We've been talking about the F-35 was supposed to be our replacement jet for the CF-18. The CF-18 came into service in around 1980. Pierre Trudeau was still prime minister when our current fleet of fighter jets came into service. Laurie Hahn, who was a fighter pilot, then, after another career after retirement, became an MP and is now retired from that. He flew one of the first ones into Canada in terms of how old these fighter jets are. And we've been talking about replacing them since the 1990s. It started under Chrétien. We selected the F-35. That became a political hot potato a little bit in the 2011 election, and then definitely in the 2015. We fought 3 elections with replacing our fighter jets being on the docket. And now Boeing saying, hey, look, pick us. Here's the crazy part, Hal, is we may not pick an actual replacement for the CF-18, for another 2 years, and then we won't take delivery of one, of whatever the replacement is, until 2025. So Boeing is trying to say they want their Super Hornet, which is an older jet already, to be the replacement jet that we pick 6 years from now. I don't think that's a good idea.
Wow. The chief economist of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Brian, says Canada's slow growth economy is eroding its broader standing on the world stage. Brian, Trevin Stratton also says our slow economy is also undercutting global interests.
There's a whole lot of problems with the slowing Canadian economy. We haven't been growing at the same rate as the United States for some time. Nobody expects the United States boom to continue, but they have, had quite the boom. While we've had modest growth, it hasn't been horrible, but it hasn't been great. And now with, some, what do they call them? Headwinds on the global front, whether it be China, Germany, the United States, we are featuring, as the economists like to say, headwinds, and that means a slowdown for the Canadian economy. You add into that the disinterest in terms of investment in places like the oil patch, in places like resources, in places like agriculture, where we're having trouble getting our products to market, and Canada becomes less and less interesting to foreign investors. Now, certain nationalists, and that's a bad word these days, but there are nationalists on the left and the right, and some people just think that we should only worry about Canadians investing in the Canadian economy. Without foreign investment, Hal, our economy doesn't do as well, and without global money coming in to back our industries, we don't produce as much. That means lower wages for you, for me, for all the viewers. That's a bad thing. So we have to be worried when these sorts of reports come out that we are headed down the wrong direction. Is the current government going to do that? I'm not sure.
The 107th Grey Cup is coming up this weekend in Calgary, Brian. Should be decent weather, mostly sunny and around 8 degrees or so. Now it features a team you like to cheer for, the Hamilton Ticats, which haven't won a championship in 20 years, versus a team which hasn't won a Grey Cup in 29 years, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
I know, and I strongly remember the last time the Winnipeg Blue Bombers won the Grey Cup, because I believe they won it against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So some bitter memories there. The Ticats are up for their first Grey Cup since 1999. I couldn't be happier. It's a bit sad when I hear that Canadians don't care about the CFL. I see that they do, and I've had the pleasure of traveling to stadiums across the country: Montreal, Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, Calgary, Regina. I haven't hit Winnipeg, and I haven't hit BC yet, but or Edmonton, but we'll have to fix those in the near future. This is a great unifying event in Canadian sport and in Canadian culture, and I hope Canadian politics. So on Sunday, let's all put politics aside. Let's not worry about it. Let's worry about the game. And I just want to teach everyone a key phrase for Sunday: Oski wee wee.
And you know what, Calgary will put on a great party as well, and there should be lots of tickets available, since the Stampeder and Rough Riders fans, they sold all of their Grey Cup tickets. So come on down, Brian, you get a good deal on tickets.
And Calgary fans will not cheer for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, so they can be like me. When the Grey Cup was in Ottawa a couple of years ago, I went and I cheered for Calgary because they were playing against Toronto, and there was no way on God's green earth that I was ever cheering for the Argos.
There you go. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, joining me from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you.
And behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.